Many of us feel that the culture is too far gone. There is a pervasive anxiety that Western civilization has entered a period of terminal decline, and that our best days are permanently behind us. For many Christians, this creates a posture of retreat. The instinct is to pray and wait, hoping for a rescue from a world that seems to be unraveling faster than we can fix it. But if you look past the headlines at the actual data across centuries and continents, that narrative of collapse becomes very difficult to sustain. By almost every statistical metric, the era we live in is the safest, cleanest, and most righteous the world has ever seen. This chart shows global life expectancy. In 1900, the average human could expect to live to just 32 years old. Today, that number is 73. In a little over a century, we more than doubled the length of human life. Poverty shows the same trajectory. In 1800, over 80% of the global population lived in extreme poverty. Today, that number has fallen below 10%. 1 billion people have been lifted out of destitution in just the last generation. Famine, which used to be a recurring feature of ordinary life that killed off entire populations, has been eliminated from the Americas and Europe. Where it still kills today, researchers note it is almost exclusively the result of corrupt men using power to block food from reaching their own people. For millennia, human existence was a brutal, stagnant struggle for survival. This recent massive explosion and flourishing is a total anomaly in the history of our species. This raises a question. What specific catalyst entered the timeline to trigger this sudden and sustained upward move in the human condition? To understand this shift, we have to look at the world before it. In ancient Rome and Greece, slavery was universal and unquestioned, and infanticide was a legal, socially accepted method of family planning. While these empires produced sophisticated philosophy and ethics, they lacked a concept that we take for granted today, the idea that every individual has inherent God-given worth. That concept arrived with the Christian premise of the imago Dei, the belief that every human being, regardless of their status or health, bears the image of God. This theology, paired with an active mandate to transform the world rather than escape it, provided the framework for a new kind of civilization. It led directly to the birth of public health care. In 370 AD, Bishop Basil of Caesarea spent his personal fortune to build a massive complex where the sick and poor, including lepers, the most untouchable people of the time, could be treated for free. This specific architecture of healing eventually became the standard for the Western world. Every hospital system traces its lineage back to that moment of Christian conviction. It drove literacy as well. Because Christians believed every person needed to read the Bible for themselves, they built schools alongside their churches, increasing global literacy from 12% in 1800 to over 87% today. When William Wilberforce and his fellow Christians spent 20 years standing in the British Parliament to abolish slavery, they did so on the grounds that it was incompatible with a belief in the image of God. Within 200 years of that conviction taking root, chattel slavery became illegal in every nation on earth. Modern human rights and universal education and public health are the direct results of this theological engine. Some point to the 20th century as a refutation of this progress. After all, those 100 years saw 100 million people die from war and genocide. However, every one of those atrocities was the product of explicitly anti-Christian ideologies like Marxism and fascism, regimes that rejected individual worth in favor of the absolute power of the collective. Then there is the modern culture war, specifically the deep division over abortion. While the numbers are real and grievous, consider how the argument has changed. In the pre-Christian world, child killing was legal and socially accepted. Today, the very intensity of the debate over when life begins proves that the fundamental premise, that human life has absolute value, is now the dominant global consensus. Even recent social movements attempting to redefine biological sex are seeing a significant medical and legal pullback. The UK Supreme Court and several Scandinavian health systems have already begun reversing course on gender medicine for minors, prioritizing biological reality over ideological shifts. Historical data shows that societal regression typically happens in the specific spaces where this worldview is abandoned, making its presence a necessary bedrock for continued flourishing. Despite the challenges in the West, this worldview is actively expanding. In China, the number of Christians has grown from 4 million in 1949 to roughly 100 million today, persisting despite active government suppression. In 1900, South Korea was just 1% Christian. Today, nearly a third of the country follows Christ, and they now send more missionaries into the world than any nation except the United States. There is a notable correlation between these trends and global stability. Researchers find that the regions still struggling with rigid caste structures and a total lack of healthcare often align with the places where the individual rights framework of the gospel hasn't yet gone deep. Nostalgia is often a form of poor memory. 3,000 years ago, Solomon called the good old days argument foolish because it ignores what God is doing in the present. You were placed in the most medically advanced and materially prosperous moment in human history. Reject the despair of the cultural doom loop. Be grateful for the era you were given, and get back into the